something going on in the conversation, in the zeitgeist. So, because Jeffrey Epstein is who he is, his association with all sorts of persons, I have seen some new communist-style people popping up out of the woodwork, talking about, punishing the system of people being capable of being billionaires, or millionaires or whatever, as the problem, right? Which, he goes through this whole thing, and he goes through this psychoanalysis of people that are working very hard for justice, and because we're just regular guys who are trying to do a job the government won't, and keeps promising it's one of the things it's good for, and acting like the dopamine hit that one may experience from the thrill of catching a monster as nothing but a psychological with your moral guidance, and it is that psychological condition you are enslaved to the impulse of being a justice hunter. It was the most absurd horseshit I'd ever heard over somebody who can accept the vastness of a pedophile network of billionaires just because of the privacy they get and human nature, but is completely ignoring what the system is and just blaming capitalism by just simply saying, oh, it's the system and it's how much money you can get, yada, yada, yada. You're not allowed to be that wealthy as far as your personal wealth is concerned. And at a certain point, your company is just so big in a country that it's of a country's interest, right? It's almost actually socialism, but they still have a class scale and a sense of diverse opinions. I mean, it's been under threat because of the monoculture of things that have been going on, but not all over the place. And there's a lot of nations in the EU and in Europe as a whole that have widely different ideas, and I'm not just talking about liberal to conservative spectrum here. The longer that this drags on, the more that people that aren't interested in all sorts of things, it's just like, okay, you don't want to catch the monster at all, it sounds like. I mean, you said you do, but why? If it's just a psychological impulse, maybe there are no monsters, and this email was all a LARP, because you almost sound like we're overreacting, and maybe your Valium needs to be updated because he was so fucking comatose in the way that he talked. At the very least, he talked at pace, so he wasn't like boring, but he was flat as fuck. Flat as fuck. And hi, people in the chat. Keep whatever you're going to say short and sweet, because it's going to be hard for me to read on the road. And I won't be too long on this drive stream. I've got a pit stop, and I want to stop talking when I hit my pit stop in about 15 minutes. So not that I'm defending capitalism, and not that I'm defending the system that we're in right now, which may be falsely called capitalism allegedly, right? If you understand things in a certain retrospect, as America has adopted more communism, China's been adopting more capitalism, right? But China is still brutal the way that they are, and America is still arrogant in the way that we are. And believe me, we had a different kind of arrogance during the Obama administration. Even though there was the whole walk of shame thing going on, it was almost like reverse arrogance. It was like the smugness of saying sorry to the world on behalf of Americans, which is not what anybody fucking voted for, but had become the idea amongst the early 2009 population of young voters. And moving forward in greater extremes as part of the virtue signal. With the dismantling of the United States that was done over the 8 years of Obama. Which has led us to this position, and you can't just turn it around on paper because Barack Obama didn't fucking dismantle this country on paper. This country dismantled itself in an engine that Barack Obama inherited. And the system absolutely needs to change. And just sitting there and acting like taking away a pervert's money will stop him from being capable of being a pervert on a significant level. Right? Like, what you're doing is that you're saying, let's just give them less money so that way, because we don't know how to stop them, really. But if we don't give anybody money, then nobody can hurt anybody, because we all have urges, and sometimes those urges are horrifying. It wouldn't surprise me if some big trumped-up charges event has happened a million times in history before as part of an impetus for a regime change, where you do this Pam Bondi thing and you're like, think of the Dow, and all you're doing is intentionally sacrificing, at the very least, the character you're portraying. Right? All of these characters will all end up being taken off of the global chessboard and be whisked away to a secret place codenamed Valhalla. That's what everybody thinks now, including a spot in Greenland called Valhalla, which I think is like on or next to a U.S. military base or something. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. What does matter? What matters is that the person who's now making it an issue about the economic system, let's just face reality. You are also getting your dopamine hit, whether you want to pretend you're above it because, you're talking, let's be very fair and reasonable and logical and yada, 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 and I probably don't think there's a God or a human soul. But anyway, they're just, they're just getting the dopamine hit after, tapping the well again of going after the bourgeoisie. The feeling of being the new proletariat. Trying to find that unification principle. That unification principle to force people to give you what they've earned is fascist in principle. Because you've confused what fascism is. You look at what they did, or what they're even doing in communist China. It's the central planning. All it is your government becomes the corporation. There's zilcho differential relationship between communism and what the Nazis were fucking doing. The only difference was is that they were fucking nationalists. They liked the socialism. They wanted to do it as nationalists. They wanted to give Israel a nation and kick them out of there. But they didn't understand on the down low that the reality was is that they were being duped by different Jewish factions that didn't like each other, one of which wanted the non-Jew to live as a communist and the other wanted to do as a capitalist. And even though they really hate each other, the ones above them manipulating them to hate each other know that if you have to give the idiots communism, you've got to turn it into neo-feudalist slavery, and you're going to have a wealthy nation to offset the balance, which is what America became when we decided to open up trade relations with China in the Nixon administration. But no, let's just blame capitalism instead of understanding that it's actually about globalism versus nationalism, because your economics is being structurally challenged as a coherency, which is why New York City now is begging Albany for more money. Right? And they don't fucking need it. You're not special anymore, New York. The presence of the UN there means fucking nothing. You don't make anything anymore. Anything that could have been made in New York could be made anywhere else across the world in a small fucking town and then shipped out because of the new way networks and supply chains operate. You don't all have to fucking hang out and come up with ideas on Madison fucking Avenue. All right? You didn't have to destroy capitalism to end the tyranny of the crony corporatism of New York fucking Wall Street monsters. I couldn't even begin to tell you about the multi-tiered level of fucking reasons why an allegedly free society that has to be a capitalist society and vice versa. But that doesn't mean that I simply get to fucking have special power because I have money. Right? I have purchasing power, sure. But if I'm not qualified to purchase the item or the service, and then ultimately at the end of the day, it's a matter of privacy. Two men in their private affairs with their private money on their private time with their private things, but the crossover with their interest groups, that's where it gets different. Maybe we want to talk about taking away a congressperson or a senator's cell phone when they are in fucking session on the floor, considering a fucking system where there's the text message from Jeff or the email from Jeff in real time to the tape of when a congresswoman altered her fucking position to ask a question based on a tip that Jeffrey Epstein gave her in real time involving Donald Trump's lawyer, the Cohen guy, way back in the day in his first administration. Shit. It's a very long line. I don't want to cut you off. Anyway, so what the fuck is it going to matter if government still exists like and you know that your system is going to be a system with a government because you don't know how to think like an anarchist, except to think about anarchism as you have known it, which doesn't which is a false claim on the title, on the descriptive term for a thing, as to call that of any form of without rulers and without slaves. You can see this bullshit, right? So I'm gonna let you guys go. That's basically all I had to say on it. So get ready for people that are going to fucking glean over the global chessboard situation, and just fucking act on the fucking money issue, because they're gonna miss the point big time, and they will use the Epstein files as a big moral fucking argument against capitalism, which has been their only fucking argument, which is coming from a hypocrisy. But at the same time, the next generation may or may not have a lot of that hypocrisy. So therefore, hold on a second. Ooh. Therefore, they're going to be the revolutionary generation, whether it be a constructed revolution, like what they did with AOC and things like that, because I think that's going to follow suit. I think it's going to follow suit. As long as a politician is effectively clean, or perceived as clean, and they're likable, that's all they need to get reelected, more or less. Like, their standards are so low, they're just sitting there hoping that more fucking politicians get elected of their ilk, and we got to do a better job at that. All right. Okay, guys. I'll catch you guys later.